Good evening, everybody. Good evening, good evening. How are you? Um, yes, I was just waiting for Catherine Dandy to show up so that we can spotlight her video. Um, Catherine, good evening. I don't know why when I spotlight you, I'm not able to see you live on YouTube. I don't know what's going on. On YouTube, maybe I should pin and we'll see whether that will work. Okay, no, I could see you. All right, I see now. Um, Let me just go do that again. Sorry. Remove pin and then spotlight and spotlight. All right. It would be unfair to have a sign language interpreter who is not being seen. So it doesn't really make sense as to why we should have one. And that's why I had to take a minute to do that. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for being here this evening. It is an exciting evening for us to learn one of the most important and value addition for you as a business owner and for you as a HR professional. And we are privileged to have you here tonight. I know we are here from all walks of life. So welcome. This program is called Get It Right with Atara Solutions. Now, Get It Right with Atara Solutions is a webinar series that seeks to demystify issues in employment and entrepreneurship. We do this every Tuesday from 8 p.m. and we discuss different topics that affect employees and employers in different ways. And July is HR month, so our topics this month have been very focused on either the HR profession, the professional, or just becoming or upgrading the HR profession technically and celebrating the role we play in organizations. So last week we looked at organization culture and how culture can help you uh, in your productivity. Now, tonight, we are looking at culture audit. And a lot of us, I discovered, and upon discussing with a number of people, we do not even know the different types of cultures that we have. So every time I see on WhatsApp everyone answering questions and says that your culture, how is your culture? And calling your culture toxic. I mean, we witnessed last Tuesday when we had that discussion. We have people who are trying to change culture, but they don't know how to. And so we really need to do culture audits and we need to do them. And I'm sure Dr. Shamim will be here to tell us more. So before we do that, my name is Grace Izula. I'm an HR consultant and trainer with Atara Solutions. Atara Solutions is a HR consulting and training firm. We are based in Nairobi, but however, we operate in the entire East Africa. So if you have HR consulting work or you're looking for trainers, I think we come as so at this point in time, allow me to give a shout out to our partners because we do not do this alone. We have been running Get It Right with Atara Solutions since COVID. We have a lot of content, a lot of content on our YouTube channel. And yes, if you're joining us for the first time, please pay attention because we do not share notes, but we share recording. So you will be able to get the recording and you can make your own notes in the context the presenter was making them so that you can get to interpret and also understand and go ahead and implement what you gain. So Atara Solutions brings to you Get It Right with Atara in partnership with a few organizations, and allow me to give them a shout out. I know we want to jump right on to the discussion tonight because I know tonight is going to be very lit. So we have Nile Front Cottages. Nile Front Cottages is our cottages and a hotel located in Kampala, Uganda. Now, this is one of the most beautiful places I have been to. If you're here and you're in Kampala and you haven't been to Jinja, please make a trip down there because this is going to change your life. You're just going to enjoy the views. Nile Front Cottages is actually a place owned by one of us, a HR professional who is located in Uganda. And therefore, you really need to go and visit, promote one of our own, but more so just go and enjoy the place, the amenities, the sunrise and the sunset. It's just amazing, I tell you. And then we have Elsamea. Elsamea is a hotel again located here in Naivasha. It is one of the most serene places you can be to. And of course, if you're a follower of Get It Right with the Tara Solutions, you get to ask for discounts. And if you're just in Naivasha chilling and wondering what to do with yourself, please visit Elsamea. They have a museum. They have the story of Elsa. They have a conservation center, which they use for. I'm telling you, those views, what are two. And then we have Labor Planet, and then we have a Steadfast Quality Solutions. Now, Steadfast Quality Solutions is an HR, PR, and corporate governance consultancy firm, which is based in Kampala. It supports organizations across the region. They also do board trainings and board evaluation, leadership training, and executive coaching. We have my friend Herbert Zake, who is an amazing friend of mine and also a partner. And he's a certified Gallup Clifton Strength coach who has coached over 500 senior executives across the globe. And of course, Herbert, we appreciate you. Thank you for introducing me to Dr. Shamim. She is a powerhouse, I tell you, just from the conversations we are having. Thank you for linking us with the Uganda, and I hope that this has been beneficial to you. So to your audience, if you're looking for a coach on strength coaching, Herbert Zake is one of them. If you're looking to have your board evaluation done, if you're looking to have board trainings done, then Steadfast Quality Solutions Limited will provide you with that service. And then we have K-Square Services, HR Services. These are our partners in Kigali, Rwanda. Thank you very much, Stephen Karango, for being our partner. Now, K-Square HR Services are HR consultants in Rwanda. They're training and HR consultancy. So if you're looking to partner with a firm in Kigali, or if you're looking to understand the laws of the land around Rwanda, then K-Square HR Services would be able to do that with you. And then we have Essence Park, we have Kapila Mintito, we have Vanessa Training Institute, we have Wicklin, we have Profiles International. Now, Profiles International are doing an amazing job in making you a Geno certified emotional intelligence coach. They also carry out psychometric assessments. So if you're looking for a company to support you in International, will be able to support you on that. They also do personality tests using the DISC model, which is an amazing tool that you can use for your people. So Profiles International, please check them out. We are having some events coming through Profiles International, and we'll keep you posted on that. And then we have a webinar coming up, which is a paid webinar. It is on employment contract management for Kenya. Even if you're in the region and you support HR in Kenya, please make sure you log in. Or if you're in Kenya and you support others, then please make sure that you join in. It is on the 8th of August at 2 p.m. and it will be on Zoom. It's a virtual call. We are charging only 2,800 and it's going to earn you 1 CPD points. And for those who attend, we are going to share with you our soft copy of your certificate that you can use for future. So make a payment, book your date. Peter Kijanju is one of the best when it comes to employee relations and legal matters, and he's going to unpack for us employment contracts, looking at fixed term contracts, looking at contracts, the difference between contractors and employees. We know people who are in the gig economy, and some of them are being treated like employees. So what is the difference? Some of us can't even do a contract to differentiate the two. So that those are some of the things that we are going to be dealing with on the 8th of August. So please sign up for that. And then we have the Africa Human Resource Summit coming up in Kigali, Rwanda. This is happening on 21st to 23rd of August. We have a series of speakers from all over the country, or rather the region, the African region. And the theme is aligning human resource strategy and practices to the African Union Agenda 2063. And this is going to be an opportunity for you to visit Rwanda. Please get in touch with us. You can see for Kenyans, we have Rachel Dimba there. For Kigali, we have Stephen Karangwa, among others from different parts of Africa. So please make sure you book your seat or you book your attendance for the Africa Human Resource Summit in Kigali, Rwanda in August. So at this point in time, I want us to jump into the topic of the day. Tonight, I am excited. This is one of the topics I really love because the things I see on those WhatsApp groups, sometimes you wonder, where do we Where are we? Please provide contact. Yes, I will do that as soon as we finish in a bit. So with us tonight is a lovely lady and an expert in this area. In fact, it's been a minute since I had somebody say they are an organization anthropologist. So I'm excited to have Dr. Shamim here with us this evening. So allow me to introduce Dr. Shamim. She is an organization anthropologist and business transformation advisor. She serves at Discover, a culture design company. Her quest is to revolutionize the modern day workplace through the design of purposeful corporate cultures that place people at the heart of organizations. She empowers leaders with transformative power of empathy, driving an upheld business success. So she is the CEO and lead consultant at Discover. She has done a doctoral research that navigates the intricate waters of organization culture, conflict management, and employee performance. And she has gone beyond the theories. She's also an author, a published author of Lean Strategies for Managers, a book that targets leaders seeking to revolutionize their approach to the dynamic landscape of leadership and management. At the helm of Discover, which is a global design, culture design company, where she leads with unparalleled expertise. Of course, I've talked about the book she has written. She's a bestseller on Lean Strategies for Managers. She also will tell us how to get that book. And then she also runs a program called Unleash Your Leadership Potential. This is targeting the next CEO. So if you want to move to the next CEO, then you need to sign up for Shamim's program. She also runs a podcast where she calls it Unmasking Leadership, the Imposter CEO podcast. That one is coming soon, and she is amazing, I'm telling you. And I can't wait to learn more from Shamim. So Shamim, tell us, first of all, we don't even know how to define cultures. So if you can start by telling us the different cultures before we get to audit them, because my friends, hey,
Good evening. Good evening, and thank you so much for inviting me here tonight. I'm so excited to learn and share. And thank you so much. I'm really, really excited to speak about this topic because I think for me personally, it's not only work, but purposeful. I went on this journey to specifically support people in organizations feel heard and understood because when I was a young person, I think trying to get into work, I felt like that is what I needed most. So I am not only trained in the space, but I also breathe and smell and really feel this particular space within which I operate. So thank you very much. So I did organize a few slides for us to go through as we get to understand the topic at hand today. Just give me a moment to share them so we can get started with our conversation. And as I share that, allow me to turn off my video so we can manage the data usage as well. Thank you. Okay, so tonight we seek to understand how to conduct an organizational culture audit. Please do confirm to me whether you can see my screen.
Yes, we can, Shamim.
Great, thank you. So I'll move into, just bear with me a minute. Okay. All right. So first of all, I want us to understand what to expect through this conversation in the next maybe 30 to 40 minutes, because I know we are supposed to be closing the call at 9. So let's in the next 30 minutes. We are going to talk about 3 elements of this particular presentation. Corporate culture and its classification, so which you call the types of organizational culture. Then we'll also look at the trends that impact organizational culture transition, because if you recall from the previous speaker, Mr. Mwenda, he talked about transitions of culture and the different aspects and the things that we see as culture and those that we don't see but are components of culture. So in this particular situation as well, I am reminding us that culture is not a static thing. Culture is diverse. It keeps changing over time. So there are particular trends that do impact the culture of the organization to shift from what we know to a new stage. And then we'll look at the human-centered organizations. Now, once we understand what a human-centered organization is, then we are able to smoothly deliver a culture audit, understanding its key methodologies, tools, and best practices in that. Okay, now before I go further, I really want us in the chat to type just 3 words that would describe your current organizational culture to a friend. Now, I don't see the screen, but I trust that Grace will help us deliver a few of those interactions.
Yes, Shamim. I'm here at your service.
Okay, so if we can get a few responses in regards to just 3 words that describe your organizational culture in a company where you work or with the clients that you work with. I don't think it would be appropriate for you to define for a client, but for yourself, where you work, for any person available on the platform, just write 3 words that would describe your organizational culture to a friend.
Janet says people-centric, results-oriented, fast-paced. Wafula says slow and excited to wait. Judith says performance-driven organization. Keep them coming. Cassidy says, may you please, I just said we will not share the PPT, we will share the recording. So if you can pay attention first to the learning. Georgina Kilonzo says interactive, open. You can keep your comments coming on 3, performance-driven, performance-based from Jacinta Kisungi. Eric says Zakayo-driven. Nyawera says, where is Nyawera? Professional bridge builders. Nyambura says inclusive and speak-up culture. Somebody says innovative, customer-centric. Another says toxic. Another toxic, sick, toxic. Toxic, innovative, and results-oriented. Toxic. Hey.
I think that should be enough for now in the interest of time. But the interesting bit, if you have been paying attention to these responses, when we talk about culture or we try to audit a culture, we want to understand the similarities. And you notice that a few people have been saying performance driven, then the nuances. So those are the subtle differences between the different types of cultures we have within an organization. And then, of course, the contradictions. If you have a particular organization where a group of people says our organization is customer-centric and another one says otherwise, those are the things we look at when we're assessing culture. So in terms of how we classify culture, now, I want us to remember that culture is the only sustainable advantage that any organization can have, because we understand that market shifts, products come and go, technology changes, and so people move on with their lives. Your culture is one thing that cannot be a copy and paste, because as you remember from the previous talk on Tuesday, there are 2 things in regards to culture: what we see and what we don't see. And sometimes you can copy what you see, but you see that what you see is influenced by those that under the iceberg, what you don't see. So when you look at this particular diagram, we see the 4 different types of culture. And when you look at the horizontal axis, we see the predictability, and then we see the adaptability. So when you look at the tribal and the fearless culture, those are adaptive. What does it mean to have a tribal culture? Like a tribe in any kind, in any environment will be one that speaks the same language, shares the same food, has the same stories. There is a sense of belonging. You know, one that calls itself a family around here, how we do things, there is connectiveness. Then we go into fearless, where there is a level of visionary leadership. People are idea-oriented, they are open to co-creating, they take risks to develop things because they are looking into the perspective of where they're going as an organization. So there is a lot of agility and flexibility around what is happening. So you can't control that reality because people's perspective about the culture shifts at any moment. Then when you go to the lower axis, you look at the fearful culture. And the fearful culture looks at, for example, that command and control. There is hierarchy, there is efficiency as well, but there also are control systems where they're following processes and who is supposed to do a certain thing. Then on the other side, looking at the aggressive cultures where there is a lot of demand in what needs to be done. People have autonomy to do things with speed and high performance in what they do. And if you are somebody that is familiar with financial environments, you can compare this to a pit where traders are basically exchanging, are looking at a higher rate to buy money, to buy resources, to buy whatever they're looking at, because the highest person, the highest bidder takes it all. But what's important for us to focus on is not only the types of cultures, but to understand that having one does not mean that you are in a wrong place. If you had a tribal culture, it doesn't mean that you are in a wrong place. Actually, as an organization, you will have these different cultures really show up in your interactions. What's important for us as leaders is to recognize which type of culture shows up more. And if that culture shows up more, is it for our advantage or are we disadvantaged? And I'll give you an example of a tribal culture. The tribal culture is good because it calls for a sense of belonging. Everyone wants to feel understood and appreciated in an environment. People invite you to collaborate, to celebrate together. But a tribal culture can also be a downfall when you're looking for high performance, when you're looking at holding people accountable, because you feel like it's hard to have these hard conversations because, hey, we are a family out here. And so what's important for us as leaders is to recognize how these different types of culture play into the operation and the day-to-day engagements that we experience with our clients and different stakeholders. But when you look at on the other axis, then we look at the internal focus. So the tribal and the fearful are internally focused. They're focused into what happens within the organization. And on the other side, we have the external focus that really looks at the outlook, outside the organization, what's happening, the market shifts, what are our competitors doing, who are our future clients, what would be their needs. So they're focused on the future aspect of what an organization would be. What's key and important for us as leaders is to understand how do these cultural elements interplay. Now, this doesn't mean that these are the only key elements of what a culture looks like. There are other areas where people have considered their culture as a bear culture. Some people do actually articulate their culture based on animal kingdom, whatever it looks like. What's important for us as leaders within the organization is to be able to document our culture and translate it that everybody within the organization will understand what that means for us. But also for our external stakeholders to understand and feel, because we can say that our culture is about customer service. But if your culture does not serve your internal customer, who is your employee? Because your employee is your first customer. If the responsibility or the effect that the interactions you have are different from what your employee is experiencing to that the customer is experiencing, it causes problems, because what you give your internal stakeholder, who is the employee, is what they will give out to your customer. And I know that there are some conversations that are being held in these spaces where we say customer is king. And so the customer is king because they bring in money. And then we look at our employees as disposable because they take money. However, what is responsible leadership is acknowledging that our people, our asset, our human capital are important in articulating the kind of feel, the kind of look that we want for people out there in terms of where we're driving our businesses to. Now, when we talk about the trends that are impacting organizational culture, there are a lot of things that are happening in the world. We are currently facing a climate crisis, where in certain spaces of the world, we don't know whether we are in summer or we are in winter. Things are just all over the place. But what's important is to recognize that people in the world are banking on businesses to be responsible for corporate social justice, to call out on organizations that hurt the environment. And that's where us as business leaders come in. And now I believe that many organizations have corporate social responsibility projects. And where we see this as one thing that is important is at the end of the day, when we think about culture as that interconnectedness, we understand that as a business, we have a responsibility to ensure that our interactions speak to what the demand is out there. So how does then this global climate crisis impact the culture within the organization? It's going to cause a shift in how we operate. So if, for example, it is about, and I'll give an example of oil companies. If you're an oil company that is looking at expanding, but you look on the other side, you are displacing people and perhaps hurting the water streams so you can expand, so people can live, because we've had these stories. That is something that then comes back to bite us, because people will hold us accountable. They expect us as business leaders to be responsible for the environment, to be responsible for our future. So then that changes the interactions within our organization, that we then start to focus on what's important. When we call on organizations to tap into corporate social justice, it means being responsible, it means being ethical in our practices, that we don't hurt the people who are supposed to be external stakeholders into the businesses that we are leading. Then we talk about COVID-19. Now, this is something that has become a post conversation. And one area that I do appreciate COVID-19 is, besides all the pain that we went through and we all experienced these changes and havocs, is the element of us understanding that human connection is very important. When we run our businesses, yes, we run our businesses so we can get money. But that money comes in with a value. We are offering value to the world. And what we've understood with COVID-19 is the alteration of what's important, right? So when you look at the experience we've had with COVID-19, now organizations are much more aware that change will happen. And that's why many organizations are calling for agility and flexibility of their people. Teams are training different spaces of practice to ensure that the organization is cushioned from any other shocks that might come in. So this impacts on the organizational culture in terms of our learning experiences, the interactions that we have within. You saw how organizations switched from just calling for results and sales to focusing on the well-being of the people, because once you have your people well taken care of, they will give you the results that you're looking for. Now, the other key element that we see is remote working. Now, remote working is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And the earlier organizations do really embrace the idea of either hybrid, mixed, flexibility, shared work policies. The better it will be for all of us, because remember that with these experiences that we've had, we know what's important to us. Employees are no longer working into organizations for the sake of getting money. Actually, some are ready to take a shorter pay so that they can experience work in a meaningful way, to do better work that feeds their souls and make them happy. And so that tells us as leaders of organizations that it's important for us to focus on these key themes and see how does this support us. In last week, I had a conversation with a friend, and we were talking about a particular bank, which the person highlighted to me that they operate from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. in the night. And it got me thinking that if I were an employee in that particular bank, how would I feel working from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.? Because that's an assertion that I don't have a life. My life should be my work. It does not matter whether I enjoy the work, but it takes the paycheck home. Is that what we want for our people? And we started to think about other flexible ways in which we can continue to do business, but also be very mindful about the people that we work with, that extend grace to our customers, that bring in revenue, that then we are able to serve shareholder value. Looking at, for example, could we look at shortened hours? If I started my shift at 9 a.m. and finished at 3 p.m., I could go on with my life. If, say, for example, I'm doing 36 hours a week. I could do that for 3 days. Another person comes in, does the extra hours. So even as we have done a job share experience, I have a life to continue to do the things that I appreciate and love. But I also, when I come into work, I know and I'm confident that I have 2 extra days off or 3 days where I can go and do my side hustle or celebrate friends or have fun, because at the end of the day, we are asking employees to bring their wholehearted selves into the workplace. Now, when we put a lot of pressure on our employees with long working hours without consideration of their health and their well-being, we are telling the customer that we don't care, because what comes out of that employee, that day they erupt, we will not know what will have happened. But those are the things that we want to try and eliminate and make sure that we capture earlier. We listen to employees and see what is it that they say, that we are able to then sit down and compromise, and not compromise per se, but reflect on those repercussions and how they impact the way we work and the well-being of the people that we work with. Now, the geopolitical climate. Now, the world is just oozing with a lot of things that are happening. We recently experienced a CrowdStrike chaos where, a cybersecurity organized firm just ended up in a mess because of software updates. So we noticed that, planes were stopped from flying out. Organizations could not do extra things. Health sector, things were really in chaos because of that kind of breach. Now, understanding these things and what's happening really in the world is key for us as leaders of businesses to know that it will not always be business as usual. We've recently experienced an election in the UK where we had a big shift from the party that held power for the longest time possible. All those changes are speaking to the fact of what's happening within expectations of people, and also within the markets within which we operate. You look at other spaces where we're also having the Olympics happening, we have Wimbledon. All these things do really speak about how these trends really impact organizational culture. So if you are an organization that deals in logistics, or an organization that deals with in air travel, for example, you know that prices will be high at a particular time because there is high demand. So understanding these key things that are happening within a certain period of time when running organizations is very, very important to determine the well-being of our people, but also the focus of our businesses as we go and drive forward. Now, there's the Gen Z phenomenon. A lot of people are speaking about Gen Zs and how they're failing to manage this situation. But you see what? I'll bust your bubble. A report by the World Economic Forum indicates by 2025, a quarter of the world's workforce will be Gen Zs. Now, today, we are having this Gen Z phenomenon and seeing it as a problem. But allow me to say that what's important for us as leaders is to understand and tap into their behavior and what they see as work and how they articulate work in their own way. Because that's the only solution that will help us move ahead. When we are leaders who really challenge these trends and not pay attention to them, we become leaders that are not open to learning. And yet, learning organizations are important in understanding how we articulate culture and how this culture really impacts the way we run behavior, we innovate, the way we hire, the way we do things within our organizations, because we are focusing on what is really tested. When we know that Gen Zs are there, we appreciate them and understand who they are, get to understand what they call work, listen to them so that we're able to prepare organizations in a better setting. Now, I have a child who is moving into the Gen Z. He's an alpha. But the way he communicates, I can send a text message. And I remember this week, I sent him a text message and I did a full sentence of, let me give an example on how are you doing? Or today this happened. And maybe I'm asking about something, and he writes back to me. He typed NVM. Then I started to think, what does NVM mean? Now I've written 3 sentences, but my child responds with NVM, and I'm thinking, what does NVM mean? Until I realized I couldn't really handle. I just put question marks and the response, never mind. And so this is the kind of generation that we're dealing with. Understanding how they communicate, understanding how they do things will enable us to be on the same track to drive the changes that we want to see. Now, the political climate and what is happening, we've had situations where organizations or countries, nations are asked to tell what their position is on certain disagreements that are happening across the world. If you look at the Russia-Ukrainian war, then the Palestine-Israel situation, we have a responsibility as leaders in businesses to understand the ethical element behind the business that we do, and acknowledging that whatever stand we take, we can really stand behind it and be authentic about it and speak our truths behind it, because that will determine the way we operate and articulate ourselves and interact within organizations. Now, we'll also look at consumer behavior. Consumer behavior is shifting. For organizations that are working, you're designing products and services for people, our behavior shifts. Today, if you think of the phenomenon of maybe TV, for example, how a lot of us are reading news on our phones. So what's happening with general broadcasting, TV broadcasting business? If you are running that kind of business, you need to understand how does that impact the culture and the interactions within, but how does that relate with the external element of what's going on in the world? Now, we've witnessed mergers and acquisitions as well. And a lot of these we've seen in the banking sector, where then you have organizations coming together, forming one place, then you have three different cultures that show up. The old culture, which is perhaps, if that was the dominant organization, then that will be the dominant organization, but then also you have a mixture of what is just happening, and then perhaps then the other one that was. So if you don't pay attention to these things, then you notice that you have three different categories of people operating in silos. Someone mentioned that their culture is really siloed, operating in silos, and you don't really understand what's going on. So it's very, very important for us to understand how these trends do really impact the way we operate within organizations. Now, how do we now? We've noticed that our external environment is actually changing. We have no control over it. But how do we continue to operate when it's changing? How do we maintain that focus? How do we contain our focus? And when this environment is changing, we become human-centered organizations. Now, with human-centered organizations, there are expectations and there are deliverables. We could expect something, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's what will be received. So we ask ourselves questions like, what are human-centered organizations? Human-centered organizations put people at the center. Now, people, irrespective of whether they are customers or employees, there are people. The difference is people who are employees are in service of people who are customers, but we see them as people, not their titles, not their roles, not their job description, but people. Why do we need human-centered organizations? Now, we are all in business to make money, but we want to make money as we're giving value that is ethical and also considerate of the environment and the standards within which we operate. How do we become human-centered organizations? Now, human-centered organizations are purposeful. They have meaning. There is a reason as to why you step out to operate in your space, and that reason should be connected. It's your guiding star. Your employees, your customers, every stakeholder that comes on board should be connected and understand fully what your purpose is in the market and in the spaces within which you serve. Human-centered organizations cultivate trust because trust is a key element in advancing psychological safety, where people feel they can be heard, they can be listened to, their idea matter, their feelings do really matter, their background, their uniqueness and authenticity comes with trust. When trust is there, people move together. Remove trust, everything crumbles. Now, human-centered organizations also think systematically. And this is why I was talking about the understanding of the ecological setting within which they operate. So it's really thinking about how does our business connect with the people? What is the value that is delivered? What are we doing that really goes beyond just getting money, but serving communities within which we work? Human-centered organizations from a systems thinking perspective are really focused on interconnectedness, the interdependence that we have amongst each other, because we believe that we can't stand alone. Now, human-centered organizations also focus on human-centered leadership and management, where leaders are able to put people at the center, where leaders are focused to understand themselves better so they can support others, where leaders listen, support, coach. And a lot of these organizations we've heard of, and it hurts me so much, but I need to say it. We've heard about this whole praise of Google and what they are doing to change the narrative within the organization and the feel of every employee and stakeholder. And Google went ahead to do a project called Project Oxygen, and their focus was really to highlight key elements of an exemplary manager, great manager, and they came up with 10 behavioral elements. And these elements included a leader that listens, one that coaches others, one that leaves people to be autonomous and does not micromanage, and so on and so forth. And my prayer in terms of how I drive my career is to come up with a database where we have African companies that we can consider exemplary and talk about in all these conversations as those that are leading the talk. Then we go into human-centered change. Now, we've seen and had a lot of failed change processes. A lot of change processes have failed because of many reasons, and I'll not go into the many reasons why they have failed. But I will focus on what is really important. In the face of change, what really happens is that when we're looking at human-centered organizations, We can't measure that in terms of numbers because a lot of what appears for human-centered organization is in contextual data. So capturing the feeling, the interactions, all those things are hard to be captured in data, in quantitative data. We need to get into the conceptual understanding and feelings of people of what it is that they feel within organizations. But when we talk about the change element of human-centered organizations, these are really focused on change that is for the people, that is led, managed, and designed by the people. Now, in the consultancy space, there are a lot of organizations that have hired us as consultants to come in and support them into leading change. And a lot of us have messed up these projects because we come in, we are the experts, we tell everyone, boss them around in terms of what they're supposed to be doing. But the people that work in organizations are the expert at what they do. They know the ins and outs of the organization. They know the historical data. They understand what clients say because they meet them on a daily basis. They experience their lives every day. Grace mentioned about organizational anthropology, and I will speak about that further, why anthropology brings a different dynamic on how change processes happen. Anthropology brings a different dynamic because we are trained to understand people. Our responsibility is to question things so we better understand, facilitate these change processes. Because the moment we lead without the people and just bring them along, that is where change fails from inception. We must lead people and get them to recognize that this is their project. They execute, we facilitate the execution. We support them in envisioning the organization that they want to see, because change has to be one that improves their way of living, one that really continues to cultivate a human-centered organization, an organization that is based on growth. Now, when you understand what a human-centered organization is, it will be quite smoother, not easier, quite smoother for you to go ahead into the culture audit process, the culture design process, and the culture implementation process. Now, when we are auditing an organizational culture, we have to be prepared. We have to be prepared in understanding the key objectives that we want to achieve. A lot of the times you want to understand what is it that we're doing well, what are we not doing right, and then bridge that gap, find that gap analysis of the things that we need to work on and the things that we have to articulate as those that we're doing great so we can continue to do great on them. We also have to engage key stakeholders, and a lot of the times that starts with the leadership team, because culture design work is not one that we fix in one day. We commit time, we commit resources in terms of people and in terms of money. So when we have key stakeholders on board, understanding why we are doing the work we do, that is key in driving the work that we are supposed to be doing. Then we develop a plan that has a scope and timelines and resources, because, if we say that we are going to do this project in 6 months, what are the specific milestones we are supposed to hit by a particular timeline? What resources in terms of people, in terms of human capital and finances do we have in space to support this particular project? Then we go into the preliminary study. Now, the preliminary study is one where we actually test the waters to see what's happening. Studying organizations is really a research project because you get to have an biased view in terms of what's happening into the organization. So we gain contextual understanding of, okay, what does this mean? Look at certain things, check them, and then see that at the end of the day, this is a viable project that needs to be filled forward. Sometimes during the preliminary study, we are able to see certain things that perhaps could get into the way that then we are able to harmonize before we proceed with the particular project. Then we go into data collection. Now, data collection from a perspective of my presentation is one that thinks about anthropological methodology. And so looking at observing everyday practice, which other people will call participant observation, could be a person like myself coming into your organization, sitting somewhere, and just observing the interactions, just observing the relationships. Sometimes some businesses have taken it forward to have mystery shoppers who will tell you about their experiences, but the difference is mystery shoppers will focus on one element of that business, whether it's customer service, but this particular element of observation is really the overall interaction with whoever you choose to do. Then we're going to semi-structured interviews that then enable us to get subjective views of employees, what they think about your organization, what they think about these interactions, whether certain things that are happening, whether in terms of how we resolve conflict, in terms of how we relate with each other, how we promote our people, how we reward our people. I recently had an experience where somebody approached me, in a supermarket, and I was doing my own shopping. The person approaches me and tells me, "Can you please use my voucher to pay so you can give me money?" And I laughed. I actually helped the person, but I said, how many of us business leaders are focusing on this thing that sometimes our people within the organization want money? What is hard in us giving them money? Because the economy is already hard. So then focus groups where we explore the different perspectives in a group. And so that's an interactive session where we sit with different groups to understand the elements of culture, whether looking at the purpose, the logical element of your culture, the emotional element of your culture, and then make an analysis of all that. Then we do document analysis where you look at your policies and procedures, your meetings, for example, your minutes. And I know some organizations do surveys for quantity data. Now, I am one person who doesn't really encourage surveys if they are done independently. It's okay for you to do a survey. I think it's much more productive to do a survey in relation to a qualitative study, because when you do a survey, if you ask a question that between 1 to 10, tell me how you feel about our decision making in the organization, and you say maybe 10% of our people or 90% of our people say they are a 9. What does that mean to you as an organization? It doesn't give you in-depth understanding of why they came up with those answers. So I really advise organizations to ensure that alongside these quantitative data, we are also able to get contextual data from a qualitative study perspective to help us understand the intricacies around the answers that they are giving, the feelings, the emotional element around that. Okay, now when we do that, we then analyze the data. When we code the data to understand the key themes that are recurring, the differences within the different departments, and then use anthropological methods to interpret that data. And from that data, we do a comprehensive report that we then present to the leadership team or the project leader. Some organizations do develop a project team that they put together, whether it has a senior leadership and other people on board, that then we deliver that feedback and then come up with a plan on how we go into next steps. Now, key takeaways for us in terms of auditing the culture. We know that we audit culture not to sit on it. Some organizations audit culture just to make sure they are ticking the exercise, but let me tell you, when you audit your culture and you sit on those responses and you wait to implement after 3 years, you will be washing and what is it called, and putting your clothes in the dust. Because things have changed and people's feelings and perceptions about things have actually shifted. So the principles of change are really to focus on making the organization more human. So we do want a culture audit to influence the change that makes the organization more human. The project must be designed and supported and controlled by the people who are in charge. The people who are going to be impacted by this change must be in the leading seat of this change process. And that result should also be one that enables people to do work differently or do different work. The practices of change really looked at different principles. You design the change process in a way that really enables people to do the work that makes them fulfilled within themselves. What does it mean for them to be connected to that work that they are doing? Then it should also be designed to support new learning. The difference, and I think the challenge that we experience in culture change processes and culture work, is that people are scared that the findings will represent their insufficiency or their incompetence. It's not even about the person. It's really recognizing the vulnerabilities of the organization and supporting teams to learn on the process. So meaning that we have to embrace failure, but also acknowledge that there are biases and worldviews that linger within organizations that really deter this learning experience. So the project must be designed to a new learning experience. And then the learning experience should also be experiential in terms of its methodology, where you allow people to experience different parts of the department and what that change means for them. Then the new learning should deepen the capabilities of all the people involved. There should be people should look back and say, I learned XYZ and we are different in this. Now, we talked about my book. In this book, I talk about the different elements. I talk about leadership, you as a leader of your team, and then also the business. You can't lead the business unless you understand what makes it unique. The focus on the culture, the focus on who you are as a leader, the focus on the expectations of you as a leader, leading your team, supporting your team to great heights and to great potential. Now, you can get this book from Aristoc, you can get it from Mahiri Books, it's also on Amazon. Okay, now I'm very interested. I think we've come to the end of our presentation now, and I really love to connect with people, so feel free to connect with me on this platform, on LinkedIn, send me an email, I'll be very pleased. So I think now we can open up to calls of any questions that are available. Thank you.
Wow, 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 Shamim. You have not disappointed at all. You are a powerhouse, I tell you, my friend. And you can see the reactions on the chat. I mean, on the Zoom. There are claps, there is love, there is ululation. If we allowed them to be unmute, they would be ululating the African way. So wow, wow, that is quite insightful. And there's someone who is saying you talked about MVM. What does it mean? And what is D&D?
MVM. Interesting. I was telling a story of how we deal with Gen Zs and the alphas, and I was just telling a story of when I was texting my son and I wrote a whole sentence of things, and then he responded NVM, specifically meaning never mind.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I saw that, and somebody was like, an MVM. So I hear you. My son the other day told me HBY. I was like, huh, what is that? Then he's like, how about you? I was like, ooh, the syllabus is moving too fast.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So how do you get approvals from management to conduct these audits?
Okay. So interesting. One of my recent experiences is, and I do appreciate this, that at the end of the day, this organizational culture phenomenon is really new in our kind of space. Because however, you notice that in Europe and America, this work has been done. This is a new phenomenon in the African setting. And so for me, when I had this conversation happening a lot in Africa, I said, this is what I need to hear, because at the end of the day, this is where I am. But how do we get leaders to commit? Sometimes the truth of the matter is also leaders do not know what they want. And you can look at, for example, the current, when organizations are looking for somebody, an expert in culture, they advertise saying we need someone to do a culture change program for us, or we need culture transformation. And a lot of the times it's our responsibility to tell leaders that you don't need a transformation, you need an audit first. Because how do you transform something you don't have? Because culture is not something that just happens. It has to be designed. And if you don't design your culture, that means that anything that is available will crop up. Now imagine that the dominant people, a lot of the times, and one of the things I also ascertained during my doctoral research, I did my doctoral research in the banking sector in Uganda. And one of those that was also high in terms of the data and information that is out there is that leaders do take a lead on influencing the culture and the types of culture within the organization. And so imagine that as a leader, you are the most toxic leader. And this culture hasn't been designed well, right? We are going to transform what exactly? Because people are going to come in and suck into that toxic culture. So we have a responsibility. There are SMEs, medium organizations that have started and got a growth bubble, and then they recognize, oh my God, we have the numbers, but now we have to start to design our organization, have it much more fitted for us to serve our people and the growth that we have. This is the time where leaders go back to say, let's call in a professional to audit our culture, to support us on this journey. Now, some leaders have thought that this work is a wastage of time, it's cosmetic, what? Trust me, if you do not pay attention to your culture, you are going to hire and fire, you're wasting time, you're wasting resources, you're losing the most amazing people, because great people will not be in a toxic environment. They will walk away. They will walk away. We are talking diversity and inclusion. Do we really understand what that means in our organizations? So we get leaders to commit. It's not even our role to get them to commit. They must know what they want. I have had friends who have reached out to me to say, you know, I have this client that I was dealing with, but then I recognized that they need culture change. And I thought maybe contact them. And I always tell to my friends, I say, thank you so much for referring this business, but I don't want to contact that person. Get them to recognize that they need my expertise. Because, you know, once a leader recognizes that that's what you need, then we don't have an issue. We are just organizing and getting things going. But as a consultant on culture, when I start to convince you that this is what you need, you don't see it. So you must experience the failure of you've invested money, you've trained people, but nothing is working. Then you recognize, my friend told me culture is the thing. Then we talk.
Mm. And Francis says, how often should organizations conduct culture audits?
Okay. So to start with, I would like to believe that when you audit your culture and you're on a path, because once you audit, you design the culture. And that's the interesting bit, that the audit process will inform the culture you want to see. When you ask people about what's not happening, what's happening well or what's not happening, they tell you what they would like to see. So as you audit in the process, you're getting the design process of exactly what they would like to see. So then we're able to design and then get into the implementation phase. So how often can you audit your culture? That's why I'm saying you must be intentional on the process. Culture is not something we fix today. You audit the culture, and I would like to say that based on the level on how big your organization is, the smallest experience of culture audit will be 3 months. And I'm not talking a survey. I am talking a contextual audit that is intentional, where we engage teams and hear from them, hear their fears, feel their experiences, because a lot of the times we've dismissed feelings, but you know what? We're human. We're human. We can't continue to say, I don't care about people's feelings. No, feelings is in how we connect, it's in how we sell. So don't even focus on doing more audits. Audit and make sure that you implement the process and get a person who is an expert on the area to help you. Some businesses have thought that they will advertise for a culture consultant, you give them a proposal, and then they think with that proposal they will do the implementation. You can't do it. You can't do it. You're already part of the problem. You won't see what I see. So focus on auditing and make responses to those audits. That is implementing the processes. And once you've implemented, then ask questions. Call in your person, because culture work is really emotional work. You are building a relationship with a client. Oftentimes, the clients that I work with, I will be with them through thick and thin, because this is a relationship we are building. I don't see how an organization will hire a culture a consultant to do a culture audit and invite someone else to do an implementation, because this work is also private work. It entails looking into your organization and vulnerabilities. You don't want to expose your organization to different people, right? So don't focus on doing audits several times. Audit, get the findings, implement. When you implement, now start to ask questions, start to experience and see what people are saying.
And somebody else is asking, how can an organization support and empower employees to take ownership of their work, make decisions, and drive impact within their roles?
Okay, involvement. When you, and I've said this several times, that we talk about employee engagement, and we all in organizations, we all have different understandings of employee engagement. We think by having a Zoom call every Friday helps us. Yeah, our people are engaged. No, there are people who are quiet on that call. There are people who just say yes for the sake of saying yes, right? And so encouraging people to get involved means empowering them. Ask them, because every organization, like I said, is a human-centered organization, starts with tapping into the purpose. Are all your people aligned with your purpose? I know organizations, for example, at my level, that I can't work with because I don't align with their purpose. When I have people who reach out to me to work with me, I often say, let's have a conversation and see whether we are aligned on values, because that's key. Now, make sure and check that your people are aligned on your values, are aligned on the level of leadership, the leaders that you have. Are you developing your people? Involve people. Don't just throw things at them. Ask them questions. Just ask questions.
All right. Somebody saying, how should an organization address and manage conflicts or discrepancies between the culture? Because between the culture and employees' what? Between the culture and employee experiences.
Well, this is quite interesting. Now, for my doctorate work, I actually came up with a framework, which is cultivating collaborative resilience and harmony. And it's specifically leveraging, because what I wanted to understand is the role organizational culture plays in formal conflict management processes. Now, conflict is such a huge thing, but also when we hear of conflict, we think people have to be fighting, people have to be looking at each other a certain way, but also conflict could be as what you're communicating as a head of department is not what I'm telling the customer. You know, what the leadership is saying is our strategy is not what we are seeing on the ground. That is conflict. So understanding really culture work is about driving alignment in our strategy, because once you have your culture wrong, you can have a meticulous strategy, but if your culture is not an environment that will enable the interactions of that strategy, you are into a hot zone. So it's important for us to understand those dynamics of conflict and what that means, because sometimes we think it's so much more about us exchanging words and looking at people a certain way. It's about aligning our culture. Once you understand what a human-centered organization is, you have the answer to the rest of the things. And you don't always have to have the answer, but ask your people.
Jacqueline is saying, so are we now shifting from profit-centered organizations to human-centered organizations? This might send the HRs home.
No, it actually won't. I will tell you that organizations that have tapped into human-centeredness and well-being are getting the results. Just picture this. As an employer, you are much more mindful about my well-being. You are mindful about what's happening around me. You are focused on how what we do really impacts on other people. Tell me who wouldn't really give you the results. We are human beings. We are human beings. You know, in the long run, we want that interconnectedness. When we are human-centered organizations, that means that also we are pulling people towards us, because customers are looking for that. And I'll give you an example. When we talk about automation today, you call a company, you have someone put you on hold for God knows wherever, they are taking you through everything. When you want to do this, press this, press that. You become gutted because you don't have the time. So we need to think about in the process, as we want to minimize our expenditure in terms of maybe leveraging, virtual assistants and all that. What is it the person is looking for? The person on the other end of the phone, they are looking for human connection, right? There was a time I was stranded on, somewhere in a particular place, and I was waiting. I had to call the company that booked my travel ticket, and the person told me, "Sorry, there's nothing I can do." Just imagine how I felt. That you call the company who is responsible to supporting you after signing up for a prescription that costed me money, and you tell me you can't change my flight date and there's nothing you can do about it. You're going to lose the client. When I returned, I had to cancel my subscription. So it's very, very important for us to understand that being human connected gives us the results we want. Because you will find a client who will come back today, come back tomorrow. Sometimes you might not even have the solution for them, but they tell you the client gets you to actually create that solution so you can start to offer it.
That's true. That's true. There's somebody saying organizational culture cannot be measured quantitatively, but mostly assessed in perception. How would you measure perception without without appearing subjective?
Okay, so for you to get better results, the results have to be subjective. And that is what I said earlier, that a lot of organizations are running away from contextual data, which means you are sitting, for example, it's a semi-structured interview, and I'm asking you about a particular element of interaction within the organization. You are going to give me your subjective view. It's not even a perception, it's what you feel. A lot of the times when we look at quantitative data, when we issue surveys, sometimes people just complete to just fill in, fix things just to complete and go. They're not even bothered because they're thinking, this is another exercise that we need to do at the end of the year and tuck it away. But imagine when you sit your people down to listen from their heart, you will get their feeling. And it's not just about their responses, but you also get verbal cues. You get body language, tells a lot. When you're telling me something that I want to, perhaps you think I want to hear, I will know by your body language. And that's why we talk about anthropological methodology, where we are connected with the person.
Wow. You know, I think most people get stuck in the balance between numbers and without realizing that people-centric gives you more productivity than the other way. Then somebody's asking, can we do internal audits, and is there a template that can be used?
So that's what I'm saying. That, by the way, I must tell you that if you want results that really are going to be impactful and work for you, get someone to do an audit for you. And let me tell you that dangers in auditing your culture as part of the person that is internal. You're already part of the problem. When you're in your house and you're cooking chicken or fish, that you might not smell chicken or fish anymore, but anyone who comes into the house will smell that fish or chicken. And that is the closest example that I can give you. Because you're already part of the culture, you understand the norms of what's happening. Sometimes it's not even questionable. That is what I showed earlier, the internal focus, that this is how we've always done things. So you will not question certain things because you think this is how we've always done it. But an outsider, and oftentimes with an anthropological perspective, we have an outsider perspective and an insider perspective, where we step into the organization as people who are experiencing this culture to understand what's going on, but also step out to have a unique perspective of exactly what's happening. Sometimes what we think is an acceptable element of culture in organization is not what we think it is. It is acceptable because the dominant people, the ones that are loud, that can speak, have said it's acceptable. But there are people within organizations who are very quiet and just go with the flow, but they're not happy about what you think is a perspective. And we've seen this in, for example, in personal relationships, where someone tells you something and you say, I thought you enjoyed that. And they say, no, it's because you often wanted me to do that. So I do not even advise that you internally audit your culture. Invest money in your organizations. Get the right people to support you. Because when I speak about anthropological methodologies, it could not be easy for you unless you've gone into theories to understand what that means to actually support you. But there are tools that you can use, for example, that could possibly support you if you get to understand, or you read about them and then understand. I really adore Johnson & Shaw's culture model, and I personally use that model, but I modified it with my research and developed a different model as well. But it's key because it supports you to look at the strategy element of your business, but I also look at the culture perspective. But my perspective in it is that what you see might not be what you're looking for or what you desire for your business.
That's true. I think we can. Do you have time for two more questions?
Absolutely.
Okay. How does pioneer mentality and long-serving employees affect or enhance organization culture? Owner-manager syndrome.
Okay, now this is interesting. Now, when we study organizations, we actually tap into historical data. So we need to understand the history of these organizations. You know, sometimes we think that our organizations are not functional, but you see, one thing I found very interesting, and employees tap into an experience and appreciate to where they are. And then getting the new people, who we call the newbies, to appreciate that journey in a different realm of light. Now, sometimes because culture is not something that is focused on, and so the language is not shaped, the newbies might think, oh, these people are so entitled because they think they've been in the organization for a long time. I mean, I've been in a space where someone told me, I worked in this space for before you were born. And in my heart, I'm thinking, oh yes, you are. But it doesn't mean that it stops us from learning, because human-centered organizations are organizations that are open to learning every day. So historics of the organization are very important. But if this historical experience is one where, and let me tell you how it's very important. There are wars that have been fought by people several years, like 10 years ago. And the person who comes in today gets to understand that that person and the other person disagreed 10 years ago, and they're still on that thing. It's important in helping us understand the human dynamics and what are we focusing on? Why are people not moving away from these experiences? So it's also important in curating the culture, specifically by showing us the milestones, but also the blind spots where we should focus our attention.
Wow. The other question is, are there universally accepted reference points for conducive organization culture?
Okay, so I think I did mention this in my presentation as well, that one of my quests as a scholar and as a practitioner is to develop my own database of Africa. Because I believe I've worked in Europe, I've worked and lived in Europe, and I believe, yes, I'm exposed to these things where we keep on tagging the Googles of this world and all that. And it's a very good thing. Netflix, Patagonia, all these organizations are doing something great. Actually, if you want to understand the intricacies of culture, and one that is focused on corporate social justice, Google about Patagonia. It's doing amazing work, right? But also look around yourself and see what organizations are doing great things that we can leverage. And I think that's a challenge for us as professionals and scholars to make sure that we develop databases that can be examples that we can offer in the African setting, because also in our setting, it's quite different. And for us to keep copying and pasting what happens in Google might not work really a lot of the times. And so it's a challenge for us to develop a database of African organizations that are doing amazing things that we can learn from. And one of my pleas that I think is to, when I engage with organizations, there are certain things that I see are great of a particular organization, but they're a struggle of another organization. And one of the things I would like to do is to get my clients, who can then, intersect in a way where the things that you're struggling with, you can support another organization, teams lead themselves in terms of making sure that change happens for them. I think it creates a level of understanding, interconnectedness in how we build human-centered organizations across the board.
That's true. I need to link you up with my friend Vicky, who has started an academy, and she's looking for people who can just produce for Africa, like in the African context, not the borrowed whatever. Yeah. And probably the last one is from my good friend Gad. How does organization culture compare to industry norms and best practices?
Okay, that's interesting. So I think that can relate to the trends that we've talked about as well, because your culture is important. And I said your culture is important as long as you can articulate it, you can document it, you can define it. That when I come in as a consultant, I can know without even you telling me that your culture is about this. I am a person I'm a happy person and I love happy people. So even when I go to certain spaces, whether it's a hotel or any other space, I look at these placards we have on the wall about our values and all that, and see how I will experience you, whether that speaks to the way I'm experiencing you. But also one of the other things I do is I could pick out one value and just be cheeky with it with you and just see whether you actually understand it or it's just on the board. and that's how we can challenge our people to understand. When we say that our culture is about this, that's why we're saying that culture is dynamic. It's not static. When industry practices change, whether by view of policy or trends that have happened or calamities that have happened, we must be able to shift. And that's why organizations are calling for agility and flexibility, right? So we can't only say our culture is about this and just sit and stay there and not move around. We are allowed to say, no, our culture has shifted to this because this is what's important. This is what's happening in the industry. These are the changes that are going on. We must be ready to change for the better and for corporate social justice.
That's true. I know I said the last question, but this is an interesting one. Is culture broken down? Is culture broken down into departments? I often observed some departments have a unique culture, yet others. Why is that? This is why I prefer questions coming in on the Q&A. It's easier to follow. Why is that question now by Edward? Oh, dear Lord. Yet others are terrible, which adds up to the overall organization culture.
Okay, so I will tell you that every corporation will have different departments and different departments will have their own way of doing things. However, now, where it becomes a siloed environment is where some people are just held into the spaces and not recognizing that we are collaborators on the final good. Because as an organization, we should be able to say that our culture is representative of this particular element, and that shows up in the different parts of the department. But, and this is where the leadership comes in, we must have leaders that are competent to lead and support their teams in a way, understanding that they will be challenged with things that happen, but also be open to continuously learning. Now, the challenge we have is in terms of also how we promote people. Or you've been here a long time, okay, be the manager of this department. But we've also faced a situation where I watch workplace dramas, and one of those that I love so much is Suits and one called something Amsterdam. What is it called? So the Amsterdam one is in a hospital setting. And if you don't focus on culture, really things, people can be doing their own thing. In the course of the change, one person appears to the director of the hospital, the new hospital director, and tells them, it's called New Amsterdam, and tells them, and it says, I'm so and so, and he says, oh, where do you work? And he says, oh, I work in the basement. What happens in the basement? Oh, I operate the typewriter. And he says, the typewriter? Do we still have typewriters in here? And so it tells you how when we don't pay attention to the overall organization and bring people on board, things can really go messy. And he told this person, he said, what would you like to do in the organization? The person said they wanted to welcome people in ER. He said, okay, fine, you got the job. So we must be willing to understand that people are different, but also put leaders or ensure that leaders actually earn their leadership. We don't just give it to them. They must earn it. But also that means that it challenges organizations and leaders, business leaders at that level to continuously get their people to learn and relearn and unlearn certain behaviors, because some people are also stuck in their old ways. You know, we've always done things like this, so now nobody tells me this. You have a new person and someone tells you, oh, you think you know everything because you came from this place. So it's important for us to recognize that the different departments of organization can have different cultures. We just need to pay attention to those cultures and see, are they cultures that are productive or those that constrain us?
That's true. That's true. Yeah, we will organize a webinar on Gen Z for that person who is asking the correlation between managers and Gen Z. So I think that's what we can actually handle a webinar on Gen Zs only. We actually are planning to have a panel discussion on multi-generational workforce, because Gen Z is just a fraction of our issues, because most of the complaints are coming from boomers and are coming from X's and Y's, millennials, you know. So we really need to find an alignment. It's not a Gen Z problem. I think it's a multi-generational problem. That's why we are having that. And somebody is asking, is this why we have HR has become people and culture? Because culture is important.
Okay, so I won't answer that because I don't know why it has, but I think they've recognized that culture is a very important element in how we lead people. But I think in terms of that, what I will challenge us as HR fraternity, as leaders, to pay a lot more attention. And I'll tell you why. A lot of the times when culture is messy in our organizations, we blame HR people, whether it's your director of HR, whether it's your HR manager. But the truth of the matter is HR training doesn't have the intricacies of culture. So why are we reprimanding people on what the culture looks like? That is a decision that has to be done by the executive leadership on where they are going. When we get into organizations, usually HR professionals or the director of HR will be the project leader because they are the people in that docket. So we need to extend grace to the fraternity of human resources, to support them, to allow them to learn. But we have to create an environment where they can learn, because sometimes we just think that people will just wake up and learn these things. No, there has to be commitment to get them to learn these experiences.
Yeah. Relation between culture and business objectives. Please share top line comment. What is that? Many times in startups when objectives aren't set. Yeah, I think she says many times in startups when objectives are not set, setting in, culture is thrown out, creating tons of conflict. How best can we use culture to manage such dynamics?
Okay. So unfortunately, for a lot of these startups have experienced that, because in the start, you're not looking for structure, you're not looking for that field, you're looking at getting the product or service out there so you can make money. Right? I think at that level, what's important is to see that you are aligned on the vision you're trying to build as a team that is coming together to deliver, to build something. And that's why I'm saying that then at the moment where you get a growth bubble, things start to crumble, because now the focus was to get money, get the product out there, get money. Now the money has come in, and then you're experiencing different things, experiences, whether delaying, supporting customers, responding to complaints, people are clashing. This one doesn't want to work with the other person. They don't have the right skills. so unfortunately, that's the atmosphere of startups.
That's true. That's very, very true. Wow, I think we can be here all night. And you're so passionate about this. I think I could listen to you all day. So, Edward, thank you. He says, well done. Thank you, Grace and Daktari. I am looking forward to another session. And I hope that we can have you in Kenya one of these fine days to just unpack this. This was amazing. And you guys on the call, I hope you're giving Daktari work. She needs to come and really set your culture straight. This was amazing. So I think before we get a parting shot, please don't forget to join us next Tuesday for the same sessions. And then we have, this deserves a 2-day seminar. I agree. And I think maybe something needs to be done. We can talk about what we can do maybe for Kampala and see whether that can work. What were we saying? Yeah, so please don't forget to sign up for the webinar on 8th of August. And then, of course, we are here every Tuesday. And please join our WhatsApp group. Jacinta has sent the link. Please join our WhatsApp group to know what is coming up on Get It Right to the Tara Solutions. You are an amazing speaker, besides having content. I am definitely subscribing to your podcast. And yes, please, if you can share also your contact details on the chat so that we can also follow you on LinkedIn and all these places, because this was enlightening. And
Thank you very much. My podcast is
parting
just
shot. Yes,
coming.
that's what I was going to ask.
Yes. So my podcast, just to iterate that, my podcast is just coming soon. It's not out yet. I will let you know. However, I would like to connect with you all. I see very amazing comments. Thank you so much. And I do appreciate that you've listened and learned. And I believe I have learned from you as well. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I just shared my post. I'm Dr. Shamim K. Matovu. Send me an email. I'm quite regular on LinkedIn, so I'll not miss you. But also, buy my book. It's available in Aristoc booklet stores if you're in Kampala. Then it's also available in Mahiri Books. So if you're in Kenya, you can buy it via Mahiri Books. You can also order it on Amazon. Let's do this great work together. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Your parting shot? Your quotable quote?
Wow. My quote. It won't be a quote per se, but I will say one thing. Either we change the things that we want to see intentionally, or we let the winds blow us away. And that is what really happens with a culture. If we are not willing to invest money, resources, in terms of our people, the time, we shall not see the things we want to see. We'll just be those who are talking about, in Google, this organization. But that organization really focuses. And you know what? Our people will continue to run away to greener pastures because we're not organized enough to create an environment where they can flourish and learn. And let me tell you one thing I've experienced is Africa has got talent. I feel and really believe that if our leaders would just search our talent across the continent and provide an environment that is safe enough and pair our people well, we can turn this continent around for the good, right? So I believe in the power of Africa, and that's why for me as an individual, I decided that, I will practice on the continent where I am born because I believe there's too much value to give and too much love to receive back home. So thank you so much for having me.
I'm a pronounced Pan-Africanist. So yeah, to making Africa great.
Yeah.
And our solutions can only come from us, really. Mim K. Matovu, I am hoping that we can get some of you can share with me the link to your LinkedIn, and then we can share as we share the recording as well. And maybe even where to find the books, and we can put that note as well. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for preparing. Thank you for sharing with us. We really don't take this for granted. Thank you for taking the time as well and giving us pretty much half your night. So we really, as Get It Right family, we really appreciate. And to our audience, we cannot do this without you. So thank you. Thank you for keeping it here as well. I mean, we are 136 right now, and it's 9:30. So we are doing quite well. So Superior Ronja has shared with you the number for Nile Front Cottages. I hope you can get in touch with them. We will share the recording. We may not be able to share the slides, but we'll share the recording. She shared screen, so it's easy for you to actually go through the slides as you listen in and just get to understand. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It is Get It Right with Atara Solutions. That's where the link to the recording will be uploaded. You can actually just subscribe and you'll be notified. And then follow us on Instagram, Atara Solutions. Like our Facebook page, Atara Solutions. On LinkedIn, you can follow us as well. We are Atara Solutions. YouTube channel is Get It Right with Atara Solutions. So thank you very much. And in case you want to get in touch with Dr. Shamim and you have not saved the email address, please, you can reach out to me always, and we'll be able to share the contact details. So thank you very much, guys. It's been an amazing Tuesday. See you next Tuesday, same place, same time. As we discuss business now, we want to transition into business. HR month is over. So on Tuesday, we will run back to discussing other things that affect employers and employees as we figure out the HR part of things. So thank you very much and have yourselves a lovely, lovely night. Dr. Shamim, asante sana and night. I think we can talk later.
Okay.
And you can enjoy the comments as well. Bye.
It's classic games with shadow box and double cross. You need the chance.